Phil Mackey, Tom Pelissero down here in the basement at Winter Park, 1500ESPN.com, breaking down all your Vikings draft coverage needs. And let's get right to the point. Second round, Vikings had 2 picks tonight. They take a cornerback with the number 34 overall pick, Chris Cook out of Virginia, the guy you had pegged all along in that spot, or at least in the first round at pick 30.
Yeah, and he's a little bit raw, but he's 6'2", has long arms. The Vikings really like what he's going to be able to bring in press coverage on the outside, and that is something they need. Even after the signing of Lito Shepherd, they still are dealing with Cedric Griffin coming off an injury. Benny Sapp is not a guy you want outside regularly. Cook's a guy who can step right in, and they didn't move down from that 34 pick, in part because it became very obvious that no one really wanted to move up and take one of those quarterbacks.
Correct, and if anybody thought that Jimmy Clausen was a franchise quarterback, I think that was proven to be false because everybody passed on him in the first round, and then he slipped all the way to the middle of the second round too. So if the Vikings were talking about the 4 players on the top of their list heading into day 2, it's pretty obvious Jimmy Clausen wasn't one of them. And speaking of the middle of the first round, the Vikings trade up from pick 62 to pick 51 to get running back Toby Gerhart, Heisman Trophy candidate out of Stanford from last season.
And that's a big move. When we look at the trade value chart, the Vikings basically gave up the equivalent of a 6th round pick. So not only did they make an aggressive move and try to move up even higher than 51 to get him, they also gave up more than the value chart would suggest. But they needed a guy to take over that second role with Adrian Peterson. Looking at the other guys on the roster, scouts didn't think any of those guys were going to be ready to take on that sort of Chester Taylor role. They're hopeful on Gerhart.
And it'll be interesting to see how Gerhart is used because he said during the conference call tonight he's very comfortable picking up blitzes. Spielman and Childress both like the way that he can play out of the backfield, catch passes, even though he didn't do a whole lot of that at Stanford. But number 1 priority, pick up the blitz and fulfill some of the things that Chester Taylor did so well for the Vikings the last 3 years.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting to see how they mix those carries. It certainly sounded like, to me, they think that he can step right in and basically be in that same sort of a role as Chester Taylor. He's built a little bit different than Taylor. He's a little bit bulkier guy, so we'll see how that ends up heading out.
One more day left of the draft. The Vikings will go second in round 4, and then they have a round 6 pick, and then
2 in the 5th and 2 in the 7th, which is a lot
6 picks overall.
A lot of ammo to get some of those other needs filled and maybe even take another move up. Are they going to trade back from the 2nd pick in the 4th round? Rick Spielman's hinted at that, but I have a feeling that they're going to end up sticking there because you're going to get a much better player there than if you start dropping down and accumulating 6th and 7th round picks. They still could use help on the interior line. They need some depth at linebacker. They probably need to grab a defensive tackle. And really, I could see them perhaps grabbing a tight end at somewhere along the line, maybe even a safety as well. Bunch of picks. They don't necessarily need immediate starters there. They filled 2 of, if not the 2 biggest needs on the roster today.
1500ESPN.com, the Sports Wire. We got all your Vikings draft needs covered all weekend long, and now it's time to maybe mix in a nap or an 8-hour sleep.
And we did this in 1 take. We didn't have 6 takes where we cracked up laughing or couldn't talk, which is good.
It was 7 takes. We're terrible. All right, see ya.